back to a special edition of Power Play, our final show of the year. And the politics have been pretty rough and tumble over the last 12 months. Category is the provincial powerhouse premiers. A lot of elections. Many of Canada's premiers have taken on Justin Trudeau and the federal government head on, pushing back against what some of them call federal overreach. The Friday Front Bench is back with their picks of Canada's most powerful premier. And let's bring them in here, starting off with Melanie Paradis. And you and your pick. Go for it.
So I think folks probably expect me to pick Doug Ford this time around. I will say some nice things about him later on, but I'm picking Danielle Smith for the most powerful premier this year. She's a premier who everyone expected would lose the spring election in May, and not only did she win a second majority mandate for the UCP, but she also did it in what will likely be the hardest election that she will ever have to fight. It was an incredibly challenging environment for her, and she did an outstanding job. And since then, she's been on the forefront of dismantling Trudeau's broken climate policies in court. So I'm talking about the ban on single-use plastics and the Bill C-69, which is the Anti-Pipelines Act. Those were both found to be unconstitutional. And she's going to win again with Trudeau's electricity regulations next. So I think she's had an outstanding, really only 7 months, 8 months maybe now. She's had an outstanding year. I can't wait to see what she's going to do in 2024. She's really putting herself on the map on the international stage as well. She went to COP28 to tell Alberta's incredible story, which I think is really important and empowering for premiers to be doing.
Yeah, okay.
Sharing their message with the world.
Yeah, we're going to go around the panel. A reminder, everyone, just be as speedy and concise as you can so we make sure everybody gets a crack at bat. To you, Sabrina, you're in Alberta right now. Your take on Melanie's choice of, the leader of Alberta and what she's done so far.
I think there have been a lot of significant missteps with Premier Smith. I think I agree with Melanie. There's been some wins. I think a lot of those wins happened to her. But I think the missteps with the Sovereignty Act and with the Alberta Pension Plan are really going to come back to haunt her in 2024. So she is not my pick.
Gurhat Singh, I don't think she's your pick either. What do you think, Danielle Smith?
I'd have to echo she is not my pick at all. And I really want to highlight the fact that it was a really close election, and it was an election that could have been historic for the NDP. I think it was a total of like 2,300 votes or something like that across all the different ridings. It was the difference of the NDP forming and not. But yeah, the Sovereignty Act, the pension issue across the board, it's a kind of policy that's really disruptive for not just Alberta, but all of Canada.
It's interesting, too, to you, Rachel Aiello. Are we talking about whether we like the premier and their politics or whether we think they are a powerful premier? And those are two different things. I mean, this whole push for Alberta first, Danielle Smith, you got to give her credit. She certainly put Alberta very much on the map in terms of standing up to Ottawa and being a real defender of what she considers to be provincial rights and jurisdiction. What do you think?
Yeah, I think of any premier this year in terms of being able to force the federal government to respond. Danielle Smith kind of led that charge, whether it was the energy file or others. She was definitely the one who was on the lips of Liberal ministers most often here in Ottawa. So certainly that counts for something. I don't know if that necessarily equates to being the most powerful, perhaps the most talked about.
Okay, let's stay with you, Rachel, and your choice of the most powerful premier this year.
So I'm giving mine to Ontario Premier Doug Ford. No one knows how to win a news cycle with some sort of folksy announcement or a mea culpa comeuppance apology like Doug Ford can and did this year. I also think he had some wins when it comes to some of the EV battery and electric vehicle announcements in this province. And most recently, he's done a pretty good job of coming out of the gate, trying to frame his opponent, Bonnie Crombie.
Yeah, and to you, Sabrina, your read on this, and guess what? Massive expansion of alcohol in the province in the next couple of years. There'll be 8,000 more points of sale, which of course is, again, one of these sort of populist things, as Rachel is saying. What do you think?
I think one of the things that Doug Ford and Danielle Smith have in common is that they're both kind of like Teflon, like nothing really sticks to them. And I think Doug Ford's had a phenomenal year in not having the Greenbelt issue stick to him as much as it could have. I think that he has countered this, this leadership with Bonnie Crombie coming out right out of the gate. I think he's presented some interesting policy ideas. I don't know if he's the most powerful, but certainly I think he's had some really interesting policy wins this year.
Garatin, you're very familiar with Ontario politics. Your read on Doug Ford as Rachel's choice?
He has an active RCMP investigation underway right now. He's had 3 or 4 of his cabinet ministers either resign or leave. And he is, it's a government that I think a lot of people are waiting for the other shoe to drop. So I think it's been a really terrible year for Doug Ford. And I think it's probably going to get worse.
Okay. And finally, we've got the same choice for both Sabrina and Garatin. They have picked Wab Kinew, the new premier of Manitoba. And let me start with you, Sabrina, your reasoning.
I think that Wab won a historic election. He's become the first First Nations premier of a province in this country. I think when you listen to him, he is both genuine, authentic, and probably one of the most compelling speakers we have in politics in Canada right now. And I think he's balanced both the social issues that have come out of Manitoba in the election, as well as the economic issues, in a really interesting way. He's only been there for 2 months, so there's not a lot to go on, but I certainly think he holds a lot of potential, and I just think his historic win was big for Canada.
Also your choice, Garatin. Why?
I think in the face of a lot of negativity from the Conservatives in Manitoba, Wab Kinew came strong with a really empowering and motivating message of hope. And I think it showed that Canadians are still very connected to a language, a message, and a politics where we don't leave anyone behind, where we take care of one another and we stand up for social justice. He showed progressives can beat conservatives, and I think that's a really powerful message for the entire nation.
Yeah, my political spidey sense saying that there is a lot more to come from Wab Kinew provincially and possibly federally. To you, Rachel Aiello, and the choice of Wab Kinew, what do you think?
I think it's also an interesting choice because he did come out in opposition to the carbon tax, which is largely a position that Conservative premiers have taken this year. So I thought that was an interesting choice. And I think it's kind of a let's wait and see what's to come. We'll get into this a bit more, but the health deals is a major pressing file for the entire country. And I'm curious to see, because of his focus on that issue during the provincial election, what role he plays federally when that comes up for the next round of conversation.
Mel Parody, Wab Kinew, what do you think?
Well, I think that, at long last, there's an Indigenous voice at the Premier's table now. I think that that's great news for the country. I hope that I wish him great success in that regard, because certainly Indigenous Canadians need a lot more to look forward to. And he's going to be a champion, not only for Manitoba, but for them. I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, and Sabrina, he definitely will be held to a standard that all premiers are, but also he seems to understand, that history has been made as well. That can be a lot of pressure, too, for anyone.
I think it can be a lot of pressure, but I think he's really captured it in the sense of what it means to represent Manitoba. I think he's using that in his life experience as a way to push forward social policy on health, on addictions, on mental health, and I think that that's probably what's going to carry him through in actually providing good policy and moving that province forward. And last word to you, Garatin. This again was a province very divided between the Progressive Conservatives and the NDP. Wab Kinew wins. Could have gone the other way potentially, but now he has to be the premier of everyone in Manitoba, but also being an Indigenous voice at the premier's table. And I guess the challenge for him is being able to do both of those, execute both of those at a high standard.
I think his message has been clear that he's here to represent all Manitobans, and him being a historic First Nation premier in Manitoba is something that, frankly, I think each and every one of us, irrespective of our backgrounds, can find inspiration in. And it's something that it inspires me, and it's a message that I can share with, I think, even non-Indigenous folks like my daughter, to say that there's so much that any of us can face and any of us can achieve, rather, in the face of adversity.